Elizabeth Taylor was Hollywood's ultimate icon, famous for her beauty, talent, and unforgettable love affairs.
I think I made my mistake when I tried to tell you about Skipper. That's where I made my
Maggie.
I never should have confessed.
Maggie, now you shut up about Skipper. I mean it. You gotta shut up about Skipper.
The laws of silence won't work about that.
But behind the diamonds and red carpets were secrets she fought to keep hidden. From forbidden romances to near-death moments on set, these are the shocking truths she never wanted the world to know. Elizabeth Taylor was no stranger to scandal, but nothing caused more global outrage than her affair with Richard Burton. It started during the filming of Cleopatra, a steamy romance that erupted while both were still married to other people. Taylor was tied to singer Eddie Fisher, and Burton to actress Sybil Burton. At first, they tried to keep things quiet, but Hollywood doesn't keep secrets for long. Soon, they were caught in intimate moments, splashed across every tabloid in the world. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Religious institutions condemned them, including the Vatican itself, which printed an open letter scolding Taylor for the affair. Even U.S. politicians got involved. A Georgia congresswoman asked the Attorney General to bar the couple from re-entering the country. For most celebrities, that kind of public shaming could have ended a career. But for Elizabeth Taylor, it was just the beginning. But if you thought that was her most controversial relationship, think again. Before she was old enough to legally drink, Elizabeth Taylor was already walking down the aisle in a headline-grabbing wedding. At just 18, she married Conrad Hilton Jr., heir to the Hilton Hotel empire. But behind the glamorous ceremony and lavish honeymoon, rumors quickly began to swirl. Insiders claimed the entire marriage had been orchestrated by MGM Studios, Taylor's employer at the time, as a publicity stunt to boost her image. The studio allegedly paid for her dress, the wedding, and even arranged the media coverage. But what looked like a fairy tale turned into a nightmare almost immediately. Just 14 weeks into the marriage, Taylor had had enough. Years later, in her memoir Elizabeth Takes Off, she revealed that Hilton wasn't just cold. He was emotionally unstable, violent, and frequently drunk. The studio may have staged the wedding, but they couldn't script what happened behind closed doors. And sadly, that wouldn't be the last time Elizabeth found herself in the middle of chaos. After the tragic death of her third husband, film producer Mike Todd, Elizabeth Taylor made a deeply personal decision. She converted to Judaism. While some speculated it was to honor Todd, Taylor insisted it was her own spiritual choice. But the fallout was immediate and far-reaching. At the time, tensions in the Middle East were high, and her conversion drew harsh criticism from Arab nations. When she was cast as the lead in Cleopatra, the role of a lifetime nearly slipped through her fingers. The Egyptian government publicly banned her from entering the country, calling her conversion offensive and politically charged. For a moment, the entire film was in jeopardy. Eventually, after behind-the-scenes negotiations and pressure from the studio, the ban was lifted, but not without leaving a cloud of controversy that followed Taylor for years. What began as a private act of faith had suddenly become a global political storm. And while that drama played out on the world stage, another secret was hiding in plain sight. Elizabeth Taylor's eyes were the stuff of legend, violet in color, framed by lashes so thick they looked almost unreal. But what most people didn't realize was that her most admired feature was actually the result of a rare genetic mutation. Taylor was born with a condition called dissected, caused by a mutation in the FOXC2 gene. It gave her an extra row of eyelashes, something that made her beauty unforgettable. But the condition wasn't just cosmetic. It's been linked to serious health complications, including congenital heart defects in some cases. While the world marveled at her double lashes, few knew that behind the beauty was a silent medical risk. It's a chilling reminder that even the things that made her iconic came at a price. The same eyes that helped define her career also carried a hidden threat, one she never publicly talked about. And that wasn't the only time her body betrayed her. The role of Cleopatra was supposed to be Elizabeth Taylor's crowning achievement, her transformation into a screen goddess. But behind the scenes, the production was anything but glamorous. The shoot was plagued with delays, scandals, and skyrocketing costs. And in the middle of it all, Taylor's health suddenly collapsed. She suffered from severe recurring bouts of pneumonia, and during one terrifying episode, her skin turned blue. Doctors were forced to perform an emergency tracheotomy to save her life. News outlets prematurely reported her death, and for a brief moment, the world believed the most famous woman in Hollywood was gone. Somehow, she pulled through, but the ordeal left her scarred, both physically and emotionally. While millions watched Cleopatra on the big screen, mesmerized by her performance, almost no one realized just how close she came to not surviving the role. But even after cheating death, Taylor's most dangerous choices were still ahead of her. Out of all Elizabeth Taylor's chaotic relationships, none were more explosive, more public, or more emotionally volatile than her love story with Richard Burton. It wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown saga. Their romance began on the set of Cleopatra, while both were married to other people. The scandal rocked the world, but instead of destroying their careers, it turned them into a global obsession. Paparazzi followed their every move. Headlines screamed about their affair, their arguments, their luxury vacations, and their on-set blow-ups. And through it all, Taylor and Burton seemed addicted to each other in a way that defied logic. In 1964, they finally made it official. Elizabeth divorced Eddie Fisher, and Richard left his wife Sybil. Their wedding was extravagant, over-the-top, and highly publicized. For a while, the two seemed inseparable, traveling the world, starring in films together, and living in a bubble of fame and wealth. But behind the scenes, their relationship was a constant roller coaster. The passion was intense, but so were the fights. They argued about everything, from money to movie roles to jealousy. Both had fiery tempers and larger-than-life personalities. The press described their relationship as volcanic, and they weren't exaggerating. By 1974, after a decade of dizzying highs and crushing lows, the couple divorced. Fans assumed that was the end of the story. But less than a year later, in 1975, Taylor and Burton shocked the world by getting remarried. People were stunned. Hadn't they already proven they couldn't make it work? And yet, something about their connection pulled them back together. Maybe it was love. Maybe it was habit. Maybe it was the kind of mutual destruction that feels too intense to walk away from. But the second marriage didn't last long either. Within months, they were arguing again, and by 1976, the second divorce was finalized. Still, even after their final split, the two remained emotionally entangled. In interviews, they spoke about each other with a mix of longing and regret. Taylor once admitted, "Even when I was in love with someone else, part of me still loved Richard." Burton, shortly before his death in 1984, wrote unsent letters to Elizabeth, heartfelt notes that showed he never truly let go. Their love story became legend, not because it was perfect, but because it was so imperfect. Wild, destructive, passionate, and raw, Taylor and Burton redefined what it meant to fall in love under the harsh spotlight of fame. And while she would go on to marry again, no relationship ever captured the public's imagination, or Taylor's heart, the way Burton did. It was the kind of love that burned too hot to last, but left scars deep enough to never forget. For decades, Elizabeth Taylor was the very definition of Hollywood glamour, a violet-eyed enchantress who captivated the world from the moment she stepped onto the silver screen. But behind the stunning gowns, diamond-studded headlines, and whirlwind marriages was a woman far more complex, wounded, and misunderstood than most ever realized. These 6 secrets we've uncovered don't just expose salacious details or forgotten scandals. They reveal the psychological cost of being idolized by millions, while navigating a life filled with betrayal, heartbreak, illness, and constant scrutiny. Taylor was never just an actress. She was a living myth. A child star who grew into a global icon, she spent her entire life in front of flashing cameras, her every move dissected and devoured by the public. But the thing about legends is, they rarely get to tell their own story. The media created a version of Elizabeth that was easy to understand, the siren, the man-stealer, the glamorous diva. But beneath that carefully curated image was a human being who endured unimaginable pressure, devastating health struggles, and repeated emotional collapse. When we talk about her rare genetic mutation, the condition that gave her those mesmerizing double lashes, we're not just talking about a scientific quirk. We're talking about the pressure of being defined by her beauty, and how even the things that made her special came with hidden consequences. She didn't ask to be worshipped for her face, but it became her currency in a town that chewed people up for aging or falling ill. And when she nearly died on the set of Cleopatra, choking and gasping for breath as her skin turned blue, the headlines didn't mourn the human behind the role. They mourned the potential loss of a star, a symbol, a brand. Then there's the arranged marriage to Conrad Hilton Jr., a decision that seemed more like a business transaction than a romantic choice. At just 18 years old, Elizabeth was pushed into the arms of a man she would later accuse of being emotionally unstable and abusive. The studio handed her a wedding gown and sold the image to the public, but no one ever really asked what she wanted. It's a disturbing reminder of how powerless she was at the beginning of her career, even as she appeared to be on top of the world. And yet, even in the face of that trauma, Taylor made bold, personal decisions that flew in the face of public expectation. Her conversion to Judaism wasn't some temporary identity shift. It was a deeply spiritual choice that nearly cost her the biggest role of her career. In an era where female celebrities were expected to play nice and keep their opinions private, Taylor stood firm. Egypt banned her. The press turned on her. But she refused to walk back her beliefs, no matter the fallout. That alone speaks volumes about her character, strong-willed, fearless, and uncompromising. Still, the most enduring aspect of Elizabeth Taylor's legacy has always been her relationships. 8 marriages, 7 husbands, and 1 love affair that overshadowed them all. Her chaotic, all-consuming romance with Richard Burton wasn't just tabloid fodder. It was a portrait of what happens when 2 people fall too deeply, too quickly, and with too much fire to ever find balance. They couldn't live with each other, and they couldn't stay apart. It was the kind of story that played like fiction, but unfolded painfully in real life, across front pages and movie sets and private villas around the world. She married him twice. She divorced him twice. And still, the emotional gravity between them lingered for decades. In their final years, they remained quietly connected, through letters, through memories, through unresolved feelings. And maybe that's the most human thing about Elizabeth Taylor. She made mistakes. She made reckless decisions. But she also loved deeply, sometimes destructively, and never once apologized for it. In a world that punished women for being bold, sexual, or ambitious, she was all 3, unapologetically. Elizabeth Taylor didn't try to fit the mold. She shattered it. She played the system, used her image to her advantage, and then flipped the script when it no longer served her. She took on roles that challenged audiences, got paid more than any other actress in history at the time, and later in life, became a fierce advocate for AIDS awareness when few celebrities would dare touch the topic. She was messy, flawed, brilliant, and unforgettable. But maybe what's most fascinating about her story is how much she kept hidden. These weren't just passing moments or minor details. These were deeply significant chapters of her life that, for one reason or another, were swept under the rug. Whether it was studio interference, religious condemnation, life-threatening illness, or raw emotional pain, she kept moving forward. She buried the worst parts and put her best face on for the cameras, like every woman in Hollywood was taught to do. But the cracks were always there, if you looked closely enough. And maybe that's why we're still talking about her today. Not because she was perfect, but because she wasn't. Because she lived 1,000 lives in one. Because she refused to be quiet, tame, or invisible. Because even when her world fell apart, through scandal, heartbreak, betrayal, or illness, she got back up, faced the spotlight, and kept living with the kind of intensity most of us can barely imagine. So the next time someone says Elizabeth Taylor was just another glamorous actress from a bygone era, remind them that behind those violet eyes was a woman who defied governments, exposed abusive men, fought back against the studios, survived public crucifixion, and redefined what it meant to be a woman in the spotlight. She wasn't just Hollywood royalty, she was its most complicated queen. And even in death, she's still keeping a few secrets to herself.